You're listening to the Gutsy Podcast, where we talk about all things real, raw, and ridiculous about running a business authentically. I'm Laura Wallace, also known as the Laura Aura, lover of all things inspirational, owner of Works Graphic Design, and your host on this journey through entrepreneurship. I'm here to help you get out of your head and back into action as a passionate business rock star. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday as we fuel your gutsy. Earlier this year, I was feeling pretty freaking sorry for myself. In earlier podcasts, I talk a little bit about this scenario, but I was laying on the couch feeling real down and out, and I came across this free webinar from a lady named Kate Blake. I opted in. I wasn't really sure why, but I felt like this was something that I needed to do. And I quickly wondered how in the hell she knew who I was. The things that she was saying, I was like, shit, it's like she's in my brain. I was tired and wore down and ambitious, but struggling and basically stuck in my own way with old behaviors and patterns. She's also the driving force behind Liberation Week. If you've not listened to that episode, I highly, highly, highly recommend you go back to that. We wore our largest insecurities on our t-shirts for 5 days straight. It was insanity, but one of the most amazing experiences that we've had. The positive effect just keeps going, and I am so stoked to be bringing you Kate Blake today. Actually, right before our call, I got Kate Blake to myself because I needed a reminder that I actually am pretty fucking magical. I just forgot. So Kate specializes in helping female leaders transform their lives by navigating highly successful careers, finding time for themselves, and reconnecting with their joy. She built a lucrative and growing business, but was burnt out and disconnected from all the things that she cared most about, much like many of us. Determined to enjoy the success that she had earned, she learned to create a deeply balanced life without sacrificing everything. She now uses these tools to help other powerful women, like myself, to reset their lives and live on purpose. Kate, welcome to the Gutsy Podcast.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
So you're like a household name around the Works & Co office, because not only did we go through Liberation Week, but your positive messages continue to ripple through. So you're just amazing. I'm just going to start us off with that.
Well, thank you for the compliment. And I think the biggest thing that makes me smile is to hear that it's lasting and that there are things that have implemented into your lives and the ways that you're actually living every day. I think that's one of the biggest things that's important for me, that the work that I do to transition these concepts from being an intellectual concept that you're like, oh, wow, yes, it's really great or amazing, to go from that to actually being an embodied and lived experience, so that you get to be a different version of yourself. When that version of you shows up, the whole rest of your life reorganizes around her, which is pretty extraordinary to see those results.
I couldn't agree more. So today we're talking about resetting your life. And I know that can seem really overwhelming. Like, well, shit, there's a lot of aspects that go to that. But first, kind of take me back, bring me up to speed with like your journey and how you got to be with, where you are right now and the types of women that you're working with.
My journey was a little bit of a checkerboard. There was no direct, straight shoot like, oh, I know, I have a very clear understanding of what I want and who I want to be. So I think, like most of us, I spent a lot of my life looking for answers outside of myself. I thought the answer was somewhere out there. And if I could find somebody else's set of rules or someone else's way of being successful and I could just follow that, then that would be great. And what I found over and over again was that just wasn't the case for me. I've been lucky enough to travel to over 40 countries, and I have a master's degree in international relations. And, I've almost became an operative for the CIA. I mean, the random things that have shown up and have been extraordinary experiences. And also like, how could that go? Like, was really just a reflection of me never looking inside to get clear on what I wanted and who I was. I got really, really good at, somebody else needs this thing. I can twist myself or tweak this or adapt over this way to make sure that I could do that. And then I'd do that for about a year and a half or so in a job. And I'd be like, oh my God, I am so bored. What am I doing with myself? How am I back to square one again? I still don't know what I want, over and over again. And somewhere in my mid 30s, I guess early 30s, mid 30s, a friend of mine went to a wedding and she said, "You have got to meet this woman. She is so cool and she sounds a lot like you. And I think you really might enjoy the work that she does." It turns out she was a coach. And I ended up working with her for about 3 or 4 months, I think, as a client. And really just that primary shift of going from looking outside of myself, trying to find the answers there, you know, do well in schools, you get the right jobs, you do get the next degree to get the next card. Like I was doing all of those things and it just felt empty. So in those few short months, working with Alejandra, I really started to understand, oh, the answers are inside of me and they might not match what everybody else's answers are. And that's okay. But first having that realization and then learning, like I mentioned earlier, about how do I now implement this into my life? How do I start listening to my intuition? How do I start listening to my gut and acting on it? How do I lean into the things that actually feed me and feel really good? Because often those are the only indications we'll ever have about what's next for us and what do we do. So when I started doing that, it got just a lot easier, right? There was just a lot more space. There wasn't this binary right, wrong, left, right, turn the light switch on or off in terms of my decision making, in terms of how I judged myself, in terms of how I made decisions. There became a lot more wiggle room and a lot more ease and compassion and excitement and joy along the way as well. So from there, I started my business from there. I got certified. I started the business and started helping people build solopreneurs, just building their business from out the gate to begin with, because they were really just a reflection of me. And over the past 10 years, a little bit more than that now, I've now worked for the past 4 or 5 primarily with CEOs and founders of startups because I'm located in San Francisco. And so just sort of where I was and the way my brain works, I'm very entrepreneurial in the way that I think. So, helping companies really what's interesting about startups is that culture and the way things are done and the way people feel and the experiences they have every day at work, it all starts from the founder. And it builds from there and the interactions that they have and the way that they behave. So if they don't have a clear understanding of their impact on a room, their own sense of emotional responsibility and IQ, their way to hear what someone is saying to them, but understand they can feel something else might be going on. How do I navigate that? We started working on all of those pieces. And then in this last year, in I think maybe May, sometime this last year, I launched a women's program with a focus on helping women develop their own sense of self and take up more space in their own right. Because from my perspective, I think the way that we run business, the way that we run our government right now, socially, culturally, we are very slanted and we run primarily through masculine energy. Now, this does not mean men and the way that men are doing it. I think all of us, I know as humans, all of us, we have access to masculine and feminine energy. Unfortunately, what we've put all of our importance and our weight on is the masculine. The feminine is devalued and dismissed and discounted. And we saw this all with the Me Too movement and with the Brett Kavanaugh appointment and with, just the way that we are running everything and how we measure success right now. I think we are overly slanted on the masculine, which aims and anchors to winner take all, which there can only be one. I'm going to step on whoever I need to get there. It doesn't really matter what anybody else loses as long as I get mine. And there are moments when that is necessary. The feminine, however, has a focus on the collective. And as women, we naturally function this way. We think about the family, we think about the community, we think about our friends and what everyone needs, not just our own. Unfortunately, as women, we often don't include ourselves in that very space that we protect and nurture. So part of what I think we need culturally and in our business sense and government and the whole entire thing is much more of this feminine aspect to show up, feminine leadership. Well, I know that we can't actually actualize that change in the world when we haven't done the work ourselves. So the program that I'm offering now is a group program, because as women, I think when we reset things, doing it in community makes it so much better. But we've got to learn how to take up more of our own space. We've got to be comfortable using our voice. We've got to be comfortable using our power, and doing that in ways that might rub against the edges of other people that make it mean something that it's not. So how do we do all that stuff in our own lives with our own selves so that we can actualize that out in the world? So that's sort of what I'm up to right now. I do work with men still, because I think that, over the past 40 years, we've done a really good job resetting what feminism is and helping women really take back their voice and reclaim their power. And yeah, we put a big mark in it. We haven't really moved it as far as we need to, but we've done a lot of work around it. We haven't really helped men. Men are still expected to only win. And everything is a competition, and everything is about who's more important and who's more powerful, and helping them reset what it means to be a man that they can be proud of and who they want to be is a really important piece. I think we need to take responsibility for as well, because as women, we cannot do this on our own. We can't get any further societally and culturally and in our families without the men in our lives, needing that support as well, for them to sort of decide who they want to be and giving them the support that they need as well. So, that feminine leadership works on both sides with men and women. And I just threw a whole lot at you, but there
That's
you are.
amazing. I'm writing down so many questions. This is phenomenal. For those of you that may or may not know, I went through Kate's program over the summer, and it was quite literally one of the most life-changing things that I've ever experienced. So you're getting some nuggets of awesome from her right now, and this is just kind of a little lean into what it's like to work with her on a regular basis. Little plug there for you. So one question that came up is the masculine versus feminine, especially in a leadership role. Sometimes I think it's perceived that if you have too much feminine energy, then you're walked over and you're not taken seriously. But then if you're too masculine, then it's too much of a dictatorship and you're the asshole. So how do leaders and CEOs specifically balance both of those energies in the role of leading others?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, I'm gonna get curious with you that your description around the masculine and the feminine. When you were describing that, were you looking at that from being a woman or from being a man?
Well, I think I'm looking at that as stereotypically what it's perceived as.
Yeah, as being a woman, right? Because as a man, men don't often. I guess they can worry about um, being too soft, maybe, but they certainly, I don't hear very many men worried about being an asshole or being perceived as being, overbearing or pushy, or all those words that as women we take on. So I want to neutralize a little bit with the feminine masculine aspect of it first off, before I even dive into your question, because the feminine to me is powerful. The feminine is unshakable. Because when you think about a mother bear or a human mother, right? There is a power in there that no one in their right mind would cross.
Yeah.
So that's part of what feminine leadership is also, because that power is there, but it is not wielded or used to threaten or used out of balance. It's used when necessary. It's implemented when it's the benefit for the whole, right? And so that's a really important aspect to look at, because the feminine leadership to me is really about the collective. It's about holding each other accountable, but from a loving and compassionate place, not from this falsity that none of us fail. It's just horseshit. There actually is no such thing as failure in my mind. When we go off course, it's because the path that we are on is giving us an indication that we've misstepped. That's it. It's not that now I'm a failure and I should collapse into a ball on the ground and never get out again because I can't do it. It's that I've misstepped. And the only way we're going to know that I've got to actually, turn the car a little bit more to the right is to know that I've gone off the side of the road a little bit. It doesn't have to be perceived. It's all about our perception, right? And our reality. And so, I think the idea of the masculine and the feminine, it's not, if everything was run by women and it was all about this feminist thing and this whole whatever, then we're back in the same problem that we're in right now. What the true course is really the balance of the two. And by balance, I don't mean you use both at all times at every moment. You use one when it is necessary for the moment, and the other when it is more apparent and more necessary. It's the balance, it's the give and take. It's like raising children. We know when it is that it's not worth the battle to say, I've told you to take your shoes off for the last time that I ever will, right? Sometimes, she walks in with her shoes because she just had a fight with her best friend and she's really sad and needs a hug, right?
Right.
So it's about the balance and about the awareness of seeing the whole picture and understanding what do we want to teach and what do we want to implement and how are we all learning and growing together? Because inside of our family structures, both at home and in the office space, we're all learning and growing together. And when we leave that space for us to have a little bit of that wiggle room, when we fail or when we don't show up in the way that we thought we best could or best wanted to, we want to make sure we do is look at, what did I learn from this? That's how this experience becomes a beautiful experience. We don't just whitewash over it like, oh, well, we just lost a $40 million client, right? Obviously, that's a big thing. The most important thing is to say, great, I'm going to learn this on the $40 million client so that I don't make the same mistake on the $3 million client or whatever I did that backwards, but you know what I meant.
Yeah.
Right? That we're learning from it and we're making sure that we're growing and moving forward. So I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, I think leadership has really come a long way too, in that what the quote unquote CEO looks like in a company now is not what it used to look like. Like there's a whole lot more room and flexibility for love and compassion and understanding your employees, not just like, here's your job, do it and go home, but like
Yep.
who they are as a human. I
Yep.
think that's one of the biggest missed opportunities in growing businesses is not tapping into that feminine portion of the energy and knowing that like before your people are employees, before they have a skill, they're a human being. Like they have feelings and emotions and stuff going on way beyond what most people even take the time to realize.
Yeah. And you'll notice that when you actually pay attention to that stuff, what happens to their output at work or their contribution?
100% up. It's always up and up.
And why is that?
They feel personally invested. Like I'm somewhere where people care. Like I'm not just a number. I'm not just a workhorse. I'm not just on a production line, but I'm somewhere where I'm valued as a person.
Yeah.
And therefore their outcome is just, I mean, it's astronomical.
Yeah. It's the loyalty, it's the trust, it's the commitment. It's all the things that we want in our relationships outside of work. And if you actually had them inside of work, it changes your whole entire daily experience. The lived experience becomes something else.
It's true. In full transparency, I've had some fellow people, fellow business owners in my life be like, you care too much about your people. You're investing too much in your people. Like you shouldn't get to know them on that level. You shouldn't be friends with them. And anytime that I've tried to go back against that, like, you're right, I should like be a little bit more whatever that is. It feels awful, like in my body. Like I physically can't. Like they are literal human beings. And yeah, we all have a job to do, but that doesn't mean that I can't and shouldn't know who you are as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a fine line, right? So we do have to make sure that we are. I'm actually going to hold on one second and ask them to turn off this noise outside. Can you hear this noise out here?
No, but you
Okay.
sound awesome with that held up against you. So
Got it. Never mind. Then I will just stay right here because they're doing something very loud outside my door. But we were talking about human beings and the fine line of being the leader, because
yes.
part of what happens is, yes, having close relationships is very important. Making sure that we underneath what's driving those relationships is not blurred.
Right.
Because with employees, much like our children, we don't need them to like us. And it can be very easy to get in that role where we just want it all to be easy and we want it to be smooth. And as long as they like me, then it's okay. So we got to make sure we don't get, that space can get a little bit blurred. So we got to be careful about that at times. But other than that, yeah, absolutely. The human beings that are in front of you and having them hold themselves responsible for what's happening in their own lives, what's happening at work, what's happening in their overall experience, to make sure that they can show up as the best version of them at work, of
Right.
themselves and of yourself and all that. And
Right.
so much of that is through role modeling, right?
Yeah. I'm also super interested in talking more about listening to the inside versus the outside, because when I'm thinking about resetting your life, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but that feels imperative to starting to make real changes that yield actual differences in your life. So tell me a little bit more about just like listening to the inside and the outside and that whole dynamic.
So you mean when making decisions or?
Yeah, just, I mean, where do you even start with that? I feel like most people would be like, okay, so I want to reset my life. How in the hell do I do that?
Yeah. So even when you say you want to reset my life, that even itself seems really big and like this
Yeah.
huge, like, oh my gosh, whole thing, right? So if we weren't needing to reset the entire thing, if you were able just to pick something that you would like to have different, what's that? Let's just start with one thing you would like to have a different experience, you would like to have a different interaction with. Like, what's one thing in your life that you would like different? So you give me one. Let's just do that. We'll do a live example. What's one thing you would like different? Or it doesn't even have to be you. You can just give me an example.
No, that's fine. You can Kate Blake me. Um, my financial situation.
Great. Okay. So when you have the tricky bit is the outside thing tells you all the thing about finances, right? And tells you a story, and your mind is going to anchor onto that. And there's panic, and there's a bunch of future scoping, and oh my gosh, this thing, we're never going to get out of this, and we're only going to stay here, and we feel trapped, right?
Right.
If right now you were, instead to look externally at all that stuff, if you went internal, what's the internal story telling you? Do you have everything that you need right now?
Yeah.
Do you actually have more than you need?
If you sit down and really like look at it and process it, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so that part is really important. And you'll notice it's internal, not external, right?
Right.
So if you sit down and actually process it and you look at all of it and that you actually have more than everything that you need, what does that change energetically for you?
Feel lighter. I'm not as overwhelmed. I don't feel as like doomsday. I'm not thinking as much. I'm not
Yeah.
like as overwhelmed.
Yeah. So your energetics have shifted, your emotional state has shifted. How are your thoughts?
More optimistic.
Yeah. From this place, is it more likely that you're able to have a more positive outcome, or from the state you were in when we were like, oh God, all the external evidence of it being doomsday and terrible?
No, it's way more, it seems way more realistic to be able to achieve things.
Yeah. And so here's the thing that we often do as adults. We skip over taking care of the emotional part of self. So I reference this and I call this your 3-year-old self. So the 3-year-old version of you is alive and kicking in every single one of the human beings on the planet. And he or she is the one who is responsible for holding all of our negative emotions, all of our fear, overwhelm, scarcity, not enough, who am I, what am I doing, oh my God, doubt, all of it. And our 3-year-old, all of you on listening to this, or who either have children or who have seen a child having a temper tantrum in the middle of the restaurant, when we try to be rational with that child, what happens?
They just freak out more.
Yes.
They don't want to hear it. They don't want to. Nope. They're just going to keep freaking out.
Yeah. So the adult version of you, Laura, is like, okay, we've got to figure out what we're going to do finances. We're going to come up with a new plan. We're just going to keep charging forward. Your little one is like, hey, what the fuck? What is going on? what is happening? How come you're not listening? Why are you shoving me in the corner? I've told you over and over again. Like she is freaking out. So the likelihood of you actually being able to get yourself out of this, not only is it so much smaller, it's like it's next to impossible in this current state. The other problem is that even if you were able to get yourself out of it, what happens then?
Inevitably it's going to return. Like
And why is
it's a cycle.
great? Say more. Why is that?
Well, you just keep doing the same thing. It's like, you know, lighting a fire and putting it out, lighting a fire and putting it out. I don't know. It's doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting it to be different.
Great. And what are the thoughts that you have? What's the most predominant thought you have around your finances? Around what do you make it mean about you?
That I suck, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm a failure at it. Like I'm
Yeah.
not smart enough to make money. Clearly it's not for me. Like I don't get it enough to even understand how to use it properly. Like
Yeah.
it's not mine, and therefore I'm a shitty business owner.
Great. So it's not mine. I'm a failure. I do it wrong.
Yeah.
Are these new thoughts that you've had in the last like maybe 2 or 3 weeks?
No. Not
How
even
long,
remotely.
how long have you thought those things
Um,
or something close to that?
yeah, it's probably around 10. Maybe
10
even,
years of age.
yeah, maybe even sooner than that.
Great. So most of your life, right? So most of your life, this becomes a very, very familiar and very, very stable way of being because it's like, I know this way. I know how this feels. Yeah, I got it. And Dr. Joe Dispenza does a lot of work around this, helping you actually change your state. Because what happens is you have this thought, I'm a failure, or I can't do it, or I don't know how, or I couldn't figure it out. That creates an emotional state, which feels pretty crappy. For you to be able to maintain that emotional state for the past however many decades, your body has learned to release a chemical to balance it out, right? Because I feel shitty. So my body has to release a chemical in order for me to be able to maintain it, to be able to feel
Mm,
okay.
yeah.
We've now created a state that feels normal. We've normalized it. Oh, this is who I am. This is how I feel. Whenever we have anything having to do with finances, this is how I'm going to feel and how I'm going to relate to it. So if by chance, by some miracle, I'm able to pull myself out of this mindset, this thinking for maybe an afternoon, my body starts to freak out because it's like, what the F, dude? No, we know this other thing. We know how to survive. We know what it feels like. That's comfortable. That's safe. That's where we know what to expect. We've got to go back there. That's why you go back in the cycle. So what it takes is really not only having the new mindset, but then new tools that you implement on a daily basis. So you create new habits. You create new behaviors. And it's simple stuff. It's simple little stuff, right? You feel yourself go, oh, I'm feeling negative about this financial thing. And there is truth in it, right? There is a reality to it. So we'll get to that in a minute. But right now, I want to deal with my emotional state. Okay. What do I need right now to feel like I'm safe, like I'm okay? That young part of me is blaming herself, making herself wrong, making herself, an idiot, can't do it. What does she need to hear in order to feel safe?
It's okay. Like I got you. We're in this together. I think it's really important to share with the listeners right now. Like we did a lot of work on the inner child when Kate and I worked together, and part of that was learning to comfort my little girl,
Yeah.
the little person inside of me
Yeah.
that is part of who I am. So part of this is acknowledging her and not just being like, pushing through the emotions or not dealing with the emotions is basically like telling a 3-year-old to shut up.
Yeah.
And that brings on a whole lot more panic on this version of me that lives inside of me. So acknowledging her and saying, it's like, I've got you. I'm in this with you. This is mine. You don't have to carry this anymore.
Yeah. And babe, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
You did nothing wrong. I think you are amazing. I know that there's magic inside of you. And you, little one, have been carrying all this stuff that's for the adults to do. It's not your job because you notice that as you say all those things, as we nurture ourselves in the ways that we really wanted to be nurtured when we were 3 and 4 years old, we get to reparent ourselves. And as we even say those words right now, that part of us, it's calming inside. It's settling down. And then the adult version of you who's having this conversation with me, she gets to navigate and decide, great, how are we going to get ourselves out of this financial thing? What's our next step? That's all we've got to come up with. What is just the next step? And you can do that with your eyes closed.
Right.
And you know that. What happens is that when we skip over the emotional part of self and we discount it and dismiss it and devalue it and throw it away, she has got to be acknowledged, right? And she's the one who's like, I hold all of this. I'm the one that has all of this. This is the important job that I have. I'm here to tell you something and I need you to listen. So we're just going to start listening to her. And this is a process this is a lifetime of work. This is not do this exercise until you feel better. This is what we will do for the rest of our lives, because if you're anything like the two of us, you're entrepreneurial in thinking, which means there is going to be something new to be discovered, something new to be developed, something to stretch yourself outside of where you're at. And even if you're not even, as a mother working at home, bringing these new lives and humans into the world and keeping yourself sane in that process, that in and of itself is an entrepreneurial thinking mind. So how do we take care of ourselves, right? This is the whole center of all of this like self-care thing that's so important. If you're not taking care of yourself emotionally, but you go to the spa every day for 5 hours, it won't make a difference.
That's a true story. We were talking earlier about self-care and what that means and what that looks like. And a huge portion of it is taking care of our emotions. But we're also so quick to just like pour ourselves and everyone around us. Like it's our responsibility to fix everybody. And, you were even talking to me about like how quick I am to like dump all of myself into those around me.
Yep.
Yet leave myself completely depleted. And it's not it's a subconscious thing. It's almost like a training that I have built of my own because I love to care for people. It's second nature.
I'm going to interrupt you for just a minute because that's true. And as women, I think predominantly as women, we all do this to a much larger extent. I think men are kind of catching up and figuring it out. But as women, because we are caretakers, right? By nature, this is just what intuitively comes to us.
Right.
And that is true. Way more important than that, Laura, is that you cannot get yourself out of, I am a financial failure, or I'm a loser, or I'm terrible, I can't do it, whichever. If you keep yourself in that way of relating to self by giving all of your energy and your effort to anyone else. The minute you put all that effort and that energy inward, what happens?
I mean, I feel like things start shifting.
Yes.
You're able to focus. You have more energy to like move the needle.
Yes.
You start breaking patterns and habits.
Yes. All the things that we say that we want. The tricky thing is the pattern, the worn path. It's like, when you go out on a bike trail and it's been raining the last few days and you can see there's a worn path where the bike is, like everybody else's tire has gone through that path. What I'm asking you to do in this process is to pick your bike up out of that worn path and ride next to it. Because you've spent a lifetime, honey, believing this garbage, believing this trash, because your mom believed it about herself. Her mom believed it about herself. Wherever we learned it from. You did not come out of the womb thinking these things. None of us did. So we learned it as a child. We kind of by osmosis, you pick it up like, oh, yeah, that's what you think about yourself. That's how I'm supposed to too, almost. So now you spend a lifetime doing that. It doesn't change overnight, and it doesn't change without diligent, compassionate, focused awareness to create a new way, a new belief.
I think that's one of the things that I learned most in our time together is the art of learning to be aware. Like when I start thinking something, being aware. When I start feeling a certain way, being aware, and literally, quite literally, just stopping.
Yeah.
And like, again, tapping into my emotional self and saying, okay, why am I feeling like this? What do I need to do differently? How do I need to react? Just really being like, let's just not go back into autopilot. And, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I feel like I probably have done that for the last couple of weeks. But even just the conversation today, just being aware of how I'm feeling and then responding to it differently versus reacting the way that I've always been taught.
Yeah, well, because what happens, honey, the awareness of it, you see it, and just even seeing it is the pattern interrupt. Oh, I'm feeling something. When has any child on the planet ever been taught, what are you feeling right now? What are you experiencing right now? Ooh, did you see that your emotional state just changed? It just shifted? No, none of us have been taught this, right? So the minute that you go, I feel pissed off, what does that do?
Well, it gives you a second to process why the hell you're pissed off.
It changes you. It takes you out of autopilot where you're just in reaction moving. Now you've like vomiting your pissed offness on whomever's in front of you, right?
Right.
It allows you to have an awareness of it, which changes the state. It alone changes the state that you're in when you go, because you take on almost that observer role. Wow, why do I feel pissed off? Okay. And then I get to be curious about it, which is the next piece that you were saying. What is going on? Am I really angry about
Like somebody
when
cutting you off,
calling it?
right?
Yeah,
When you're
exactly. Thank
super
you.
when you're super pissed because someone cut you off, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, like you want to light the town on fire.
And it's nothing to do that. I was trying to think like when you call in to have somebody at the Apple phone center help you with your phone and you're like screaming on the phone at them.
Yeah.
You're like, this has nothing to do with you. I am really sorry. Right.
Yeah.
So the awareness of like, what am I doing? How am I showing up? Who can I be proud of in every circumstance, even when I fuck it up, especially when I fuck it up?
I think that fucking things up is one of the largest triggers that we experience is like, okay, well that immediately sends me into I have screwed everything up. Why keep trying? Why, who was I to even think that I could do this in the first place? And this mental thing that it's like a downward spiral. So I think there's almost a bit of an art form to fucking up and how beautiful, like you said earlier, it's like you've misstepped. And I think that that's a really good reminder. Like failure is not the end all see all be all. It just means that there's a course correct.
I mean, even if you look at your business right now, when you started your business, did you ever think that you could be where you are?
I mean, I dreamed,
Yeah.
but I didn't, the things that have happened along the way, the achievements that we've had, the growth that I've had, the team that I had, just you can't get down on that kind of granular level to even think like, yeah, I knew this is exactly what it was going to happen.
Right. So two things, right? So now looking back from now, if you were to start it all over again, would you have the knowing like, of course there are going to be bumps in the road. Of course, it's not a straight shoot up. Of course, there are things that are coming. I have
Right.
to now understand and plan for them to come. And it's not because I'm a failure. It's because it is what life is. It's how it goes, right?
Right.
The second thing is if you spend every single day, honey, look at everything we have accomplished over the years of having this business. Holy shit. Wow. Instead of still haven't done that, haven't gotten there. Oh my God, we're still where we are with the finances. When am I going to learn? Why can't I get it right? The majority of us spend over 90% of our day looking at what's gone wrong, what we didn't get to, what was wrong, what was a mishap or a mistake or a failure. And then all that does is recreate more and more and more of that. Even
Because
that simple shift to look at what am I proud of today? What did I accomplish? What am I protecting in the space that I can feel good about? Because I am the only one that is going to change my lived experience. And it all starts from what I'm thinking that creates how I feel, that creates an emotional state that reinforces usually a negative self-belief, right? Something happens in the world. I look at that and go, see, my finances are still not where they need to be. Look, I am a failure, or look, I am not enough. I'm going to prove that negative belief correct. And I'm going to do that all day long. I have a belief. My mind's only job is to look for evidence of it being true. If, on the other hand, I were to go, you know what, finances aren't where they are as of last month, they haven't changed. But as of last year or 5 years ago, holy shit, we've grown a ton. We have grown a ton. This is actually pretty amazing. Your whole way of relating to self, the whole way you feel about yourself, the way that you experience yourself changes entirely. You now feel more confident. You now feel more capable. The likelihood of you getting more clients, more connections, the people you want to interact with on that level now becomes possible.
It's all such an energetic field. And one of
Yep.
the things that you told me along our journey together was that basically what we were attracting was a reflection of what I was putting out. And that like, oh, like got me right down, deep in the gut. And I was upset for a hot minute, and then I was like, shit, she's right. Like we it's like a mirror. Everything
Yep.
around us is a mirror.
And more than that, honey, rather than, because it's not a blame thing, right? It's a really important thing. It's not about necessarily even what you're putting out consistently, it's how you are relating to yourself. What is showing up in your life on the outside is a reflection of how you are talking to and treating yourself on the inside.
Hmm.
And yeah, it is what you're putting out to some degree, right? How you're talking to your spouse or your partner or your, excuse me, or your teammates or whomever, right? It comes out of us, it leaks out. But the most important, the core of it, the root of it is how you are talking to yourself, how you are thinking about yourself and feeling about yourself. Because that feeling is ever pervasive. We can always, especially when we have any kind of negativity, you can always notice when that's present. The thoughts aren't always necessarily there, right?
Right. Yeah, it's even down to I'm super aware of how I treat myself now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm like, at the end of the day, if you strip everything back, like literally I am what I have. Like I am me.
Yep.
And what a beautiful gift. And to think back to when I used to look at myself in the mirror and think about how fat I was, or ugly I was, or unsuccessful I was, and who do you think you are, and going through all these things, I'm like, really, that was talking to my little girl as well. That was
Yep.
telling her all these really terrible things.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people have heard this, but like the things that you say to yourself, is that what you would say to other people? Would you talk to your best friend that way? And of course it's like, well, absolutely not. But
Yep.
why are we willing to do that to ourselves?
Yep. Yeah. The reason we're willing to do it is because culturally we are taught and we are steeped in self hatred. Think, even just as women, think about the multi-trillion-dollar businesses that would collapse overnight if women liked their bodies.
Hmm. Well, that's true.
Think about, I mean, our culture, it just feeds it. You're not tall enough, you're not thin enough, your boobs are too big, oh, now they're too small, you don't have a big butt, but have it be small enough. I mean, there's no way to win. And that's just with our appearance. Then look at the way we measure ourselves on, well, I have a degree, but it's from a state school. It's not from, whatever Ivy League. I have it, like, we discount everything on every level. And so, yeah, it's really tricky that unless we're paying attention to it and we start to figure out, what am I allowing in my space? What am I going to believe? How do I change those behaviors? And I will share with you all that these need to be things you do on a daily basis, or else it's an intellectual concept. It's not an embodied, lived experience. That's the only way we create new behaviors, right? It's like talking about going to the gym versus actually going to the gym, right?
Right. Yeah, it's the long term. We were talking earlier about like bite-sized information, and you were like, I don't do bite-sized information. And I'm curious to learn more about that. But these aren't just, you could read a self-help book and you can read that from cover to cover and lay it down, but unless it's like literally applied into your life, or unless you make some of these changes on a regular basis, it's like a fad diet. I'm going to
That's
eat I'm going to eat low carb for the next 3 weeks, and I'm going to lose a bunch of weight, but then I'm going to go back and you end up on this yo-yo.
yeah, that's exactly why I don't share tidbits or, just start going to yoga on Tuesday mornings, or, no. Here's the thing, none of us need more information. We have more information than we know what to do with. What all of us need is a clear understanding of what we want, which seems simple. You'd think we would all know that. Most of us don't, right? Most of us live in a world of should instead of desire. Most of us live in a world of I need to, I must, I'm supposed to, versus here's who I am at my core, what drives me and feeds me. When I'm fed, I'm more able to give and to serve and to participate and to have impact to everyone else in my life, right? So it starts from, what do I want? Getting very clear on that. And then how do I implement it into my life? That's what we need. We need help doing that. Because as you just mentioned, we've all been to some amazing speaker or some weekend event. It's like, oh, blew my mind. Holy wow, blah, 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 right? And then I go right back to my life and all the shit that I don't want. Because if I knew how to do those other things, I'd be doing it already. Right? We don't need more information. What we need is to be able to actually remember the things that have been buried by all the shoulds. Remember all the stuff that we really know. And then how do I put that into my life? What are the behavior changes? What are the life tools that I have to start creating the thing that is a reflection of me? Where there's joy and ease, where there's time in my day at work to reflect on what's going on instead of just running meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to being busy, because being busy has become this really great buzzword. I'm so busy. What if you had a full life where you chose to engage in the things that you wanted to, where you had time for yourself, where there was ease inside of it and excitement and risk and anything that you want, but there's choice.
And
That's
the
the life I
power
want.
is, yeah, the power is, and the beautiful thing is that you have a choice. I think that, being buried in the shoulds is enormous, because it's like giving away our power, right?
Yeah.
And then we end up in this mundane, uh, routine life where we're stressed out and overworked and busy, and we don't have any time, and we're busting ass, but we're completely miserable, and repeat the next day and repeat the next day. But
Yeah. And honey, all of those things, that description you just gave stays the same, whether you live in a $50 million house or you rent and you stretch to pay 500 a month, whether you drive a car that is junky and rolling down the street or the newest Tesla that just came off the rack, right? Those things about being stressed and overwhelmed and buried underneath and unhappy, those feelings are the same because we're chasing the wrong thing. We think the stuff is what our life is about: the car, the house, the title, the things. It's never about that. It's about what we make all of those things mean and the lived experience of having those things. And that's what we can shift. That's where we get to take our power back, as you were saying.
yeah, it's amazing. I feel like we could talk for the rest of the day, and I hate to even stop this conversation. Um, but I have to ask you, like, I know that you've piqued a lot of interest today. How can our guests stay in touch with you? What's something that I don't even want to, no, we're not going to do bite size. How do people get in touch with you? Because more people in this world need Cape Lake, is what I'm trying to
Well,
get at.
here's a bit of bite size that you would be, that I think what you're wanting is to offer something for someone. So if you go to my website, kateblake.com, you up in the right hand corner, I think there's like get started here. There's several buttons you can click. There is a webinar. There's a class that you can listen to. It's like a 35-minute, 40-minute class that has some really good stuff in there. There are some tools. There are some things you can start using and implementing right now. And if that seems interesting to you, then at the end of there's an option for you to actually click a button and have a phone call with me to see about doing further work. Either way, what I'm up to in the world is that the systems that we have in place right now is hugely detrimental, not only to women, but to men as well. It is the thing that structures how we see ourselves and how we measure ourselves in terms of being successful or lovable or deserving at all. And I want to reset that. I'd love to actually burn the whole thing down and rebuild it, but I don't know that's actually that's the best way to go about it. So, as many people as I can get in touch with and connect with and help shift their lives, that's what I'm about. I want you to have liberation and freedom and joy. And when you have that, then yeah, all the money and the cars and the stuff, all those things come in addition. But first and foremost, before we get to any of that other stuff, I want you, each person on this planet, it's your birthright. It is your birthright to feel connected to joy. It is your birthright to know your value. That has nothing to do with, by the way, what it is you do every day. You are more than the value that you provide. The essence of who you are on this planet, the magic that resides inside of you. There's purpose and meaning for that. Let's reconnect to that and live from that place. And not in some hyperbolic, all of it's rainbows and unicorns and you got bubbles coming out of your tush and all that, right? It's real work. It's the pain and the heartache and the sadness and grief and all the things that we've pushed over that we've never actually looked at that deserve to be heard and held and voiced so that we can have access to the excitement and ecstasy and joy and life and a full lived real life.
It's such a beautiful reminder that it's possible.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we just need that reminder that it's possible.
Yeah.
My last question for you today, Kate, before we depart is, I'm curious what gutsy means to you.
Gutsy to me is a lot of this work. I think my this is my life's work. And probably in just a one-liner or a nugget or a short response.
It can be whatever you want it to be.
I think gutsy to me is daring to stay connected. Fighting for your life every day. And daring to do the work to stay connected, because we all know what that feels like when we're in flow. We've had those moments when it feels like it's easy, where it feels like it's effortless. Time flies. That is a state we can operate from the majority of the time. And it takes work to rebuild those muscles, because it starts from a belief, as you said, and then there's a hint of a notion to go like, oh yeah, okay, what if I follow that thread? And then it becomes a thing that you live and die through, that you choose every decision through that. And it takes work to do that. And that's the work. That's where the magic comes from. But the being unwavering and being committed to that, I think that's what's gutsy as hell and sexy as fuck.
Preach it, sister. Kate, thank you so much. I mean, you've just been invaluable in my life, and being able to bring you to, the Gutsy podcast listeners is just makes me radiate joy, and I just love you.
Oh, well, right back at you. It's been a pleasure not only working with you, but thank you so much for having me here today. And I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful holiday season coming up, and much love to you, Laura, and to your whole team and to everybody.
Thank you so much. Join me this Thursday as we take our power back by learning to ask for insight, not permission. Until then, follow the Gutsy Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And for more Gutsy insight, follow me personally at @ThatLauraAura. See you next time.